Hello, my friends, and welcome to live coverage of GP Toronto. The format is modern. You're in the booth here with Riley Knight, and alongside me, it is Eduardo Sajgilic, and the eagle eyes of Eduardo have already noticed as we head into turn number one here. Is Dan Ward on the mulligan?
No, it seems like a full grip with that Daybreak Coronet. He had kept his hands pretty close to his chest, but essentially here...
Okay, no, it is a full 7. It looked like he might have even gone down to 5 there by the way he's holding his cards, but no, all's well. All's well here for the good ship Dan Ward. John Stern, on the other hand, facing off a Glade Cover Scout. How does he win this first game? What's his path to victory?
His path to victory is figuring out during this game how he can win games 2 and 3. I wish it wasn't that absolute, but Dan having access to Daybreak Coronet already in hand, as long as he has an aura, and on top as well. Basically,
this game is very easy.
Yes.
This game is Magic the Gathering is a very easy game.
Yeah. I would say that, let's see, if there's no aura, there might be a shot, but no, there's the Rancor. John's path to victory would have been if Dan went a little slower out of the gates, blocking, Skullcrack, Skullcrack, Skullcrack. But John only plays 2 copies in the main deck, so I honestly think we're already done in game one.
Already heading to game 2 here. It looks like a Daybreak Coronet from Dan Ward just to really ram the point home. This card is an absolute house and already can be slapped on top of that Glade Cover Scout there that has the Rancor. And I mean, look at that keyword soup. Gets first strike, vigilance, lifelink, +3/+3, and Ward is... I mean, this is just... John Stern cannot overcome something like this very easily.
I don't even think it's very easily. I don't think it's doable.
Oh, wow, really? Just straight cold calling it, huh?
Well, when Dan's blocking with Glade Cover Scout, that is the second one. That is an incredible sign of strength or weakness. But in this point, at this stage, it's strength. Next turn, Rancor, if he has a land, Rancor, Daybreak Coronet, 5, 8, Vigilance. So even if John Stern has the Skullcrack, he gets the block as well. And this might be everything.
So there we go. Even without the second land, this creature is just unbeatable right now. A huge beater for Dan Ward as he takes one off the Horizon Canopy. Let's not forget about that, Eduardo. Let's not forget about that. But this Vigilance, Lifelink, Trample, Flying Haste, Double Strike, Lifelink, Horsemanship, Flanking, Banding, Island Walk.
Bands with other legends?
Yep. It's getting the job done. Oh, here is the Skullcrack, however, which means that Ward, while still going after John Stern's life total, isn't going to be able to buffer his own this time around. But as you said, Stern on burn only with 2 Skullcracks in the main.
Yeah, so the one shining ray of hope is if John has that second Skullcrack, miracle Skullcrack in hand with another burn spell, he could win in that spot. Because the Rancor gives trample, John can't block with Goblin Guide and then kill it itself with a lightning bolt to prevent life gain, which would be like one of the ways you could beat a life-linking creature like this. Block, bolt your own creature. It's totally fine because the bolt essentially gains 6 life, but because of the trample, that's not a path to victory. So here, the question is, does John have that second Skullcrack? If the answer is yes, he might even steal game 1.
He could be in it to win it here as we see the fetch land activation. And John Stern goes a-hunting here. What's he going to find? Looks like it's going to be a basic mountain now. Snow-covered mountain. There we go. Very thematically appropriate. We got absolutely dumped on today. We got about, 40 or 50 centimeters of snow over the weekend. I think it was something huge like that. For Americans, of course, around the world, that's about 2.6 cubits.
Yeah.
And now Stern suspending Rift Bolt. He's going to have to do something special here because Dan Ward is in a position to completely put himself way over the top here. Another Rancor. Take 2. Take 2 from the Eidolon there.
Right, but gain 8. And that might as well be against a deck like Burn. Well, it's very equivalent to discarding 3 cards of their deck. Triple counterspell. That 8-point life swing really helping Dan. And the thing is now that because John's life total is low, a Skullcrack won't save him here. Essentially, his life total is too low, so he can't prevent the damage. like take it in the chin. He's going to just die here with this next draw step.
Lava Spike off the top, and that's going to be enough for John Stern on burn as Dan Ward takes out game number 1, just as you said, Eduardo. And now that players obviously head to the sideboards, they get the deck list. We've got the deck list in front of us here, so there's not going to be any sort of chicanery going on. The players know exactly what they're up against. John Stern not going to take Ward by surprise here with these ensnaring bridges, but they're going to be hugely decisive in these post-board games here.
Yes. Without an ensnaring bridge gives John a chance and a plan versus Bogles, whereas many burn decks would just fold on the spot. The free destructive revelries, the free ensnaring bridge, definitely coming in and taking control. The 2 Skullcracks also probably coming in, and now the thing is, John has the respect that the game may go long, and that Dan is very likely to either naturally get a Leyline of Sanctity or get one later down the line and just cast it. So John has to cut cards that in the face of a Leyline would be really weak. Searing Blaze, for example, unplayable with a Leyline since you cannot target a player. Everything else kind of works. I would say that the one you would take out is something like Lava Spike or Rift Bolt. Those are kind of the worst in these scenarios. So these are the ones that would kind of come out. Because the thing is, John can't have any card accumulate in his deck with in his hand with Ensnaring Bridge. He can have like maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But past that, Dan could make like a 4-power creature with lifelink, and that might be just enough. So it's important from John's perspective to have hand management, and that's why I'm pretty sure he'll take out the Searing Blazes, the Hexproof, and the Leyline, preventing things, and probably the Lava Spike because Rift Bolt can get something like a Dryad Arbor. But it's close between. I would say that's what he wants to do.
He's going to really have to lean on that ensnaring bridge. I think it's basically bridge or bust here for John Stern. And I mean, with 3 copies of it, he set himself up well for it. This is old school tech, as you've said. We've seen it in Burn, 15, 16 million years ago, and this old fogey is going to get it done once again here. This nice little trick of the trade from the late Jurassic period. Now, what's going on here on the side of Dan Ward? What's he looking to do?
Basically, enact what happened in Game 1. But to help this plan, Dan is going to board in Dromoka's Command, which is exceptional against Burn. That's a one-off card that is going to have a high impact. Countering a Burn spell, eating a creature, because of the Sacrifice Enchantment, it can eat an Eidolon. There's just so much of a disaster that can happen on John's side with that card. The other card that he'll board in that normally he wouldn't against Burn is Seal of Primordium.
Okay.
He knows about Ensnaring Bridge. He knows he needs a way to get rid of it. He's also probably going to board in the Paths to Exile just to make sure that John can't get a quick start with a Destructive Revelry on a Hexproof creature. It's enchantment to kind of go over the top. And that Spirit Link. Interesting trivia. Spirit Link does not give lifelink.
No.
It has specific text that makes you gain life whenever you deal damage, which is a trigger. Because it's a trigger, lifelink and Spirit Link trigger differently, so you get double the life.
Oh, right. So if you've got Lifelink, thanks to the Daybreak Coronet, and then Spirit Link separately, you'll actually gain the life twice.
Yes.
Once through the combat damage and once then with that. And that's why we see typically Bogles players play Spirit Link instead of just, for example, a card that grants Lifelink, because additional instances of Lifelink don't stack.
Right, exactly. There is actually a card called Lifelink.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the one there that immediately came to mind. Of course, very inventive name that was given to that one there. I think we don't see it in a lot of other things. There's not an aura that says Death Touch. There's not an aura that says Banding 4. But all the same, that's the way that it goes there. John Stern and Dan Ward putting the finishing touches on their decks post board, and we're going to see how things shake out here at GP Toronto. It's been an absolute barnstormer of a weekend, hasn't it? We have seen decks of all different stripes. We've been exploring this modern format in depth throughout the weekend, and it's been great to have your company around the world, wherever you are. Thanks so much for choosing to spend your weekend with us, whether you've been with us from game 1 of round 1 or whether you've just checked in with us here for the finals. It is great to have you along. You're here for Sunday Night Magic. Riley Knight's with you in the booth alongside Eduardo Sajgalik. Certainly great to have you along for this wild ride here. Dan Ward in a great position, you have to say, Eduardo, to try to steal that second game and the trophy and the 5-figure payday that comes with it.
Indeed. Dan is extremely favored in this matchup. We've talked about the Ensnaring Bridges being a key card. It is John's path to salvation. There are some scenarios where Burn can win, normally the Boggles deck, mulliganing low, and a key Destructive Revelry. But John's real path to victory is going to be that Ensnaring Bridge. because something like Late Night of Sanctity can be a real problem. So, and there we go. You can see it with that whiteboard.
Oh, yeah. It's sticking out like a sore thumb here, but the only sore thumb is really going to be Dan Ward when he has to play around this this ensnaring bridge. Or is it 2? Look at this. He's building more bridges than Kingdom Eisenbell Brunard. This is incredible.
And John was both extremely happy to see the bridges and see Dan mulliganing. The Bogos deck mulligans quite well, so it's okay for it to go to 6. 5 is when trouble can start. If the interesting aspect of the bridges is that John, because most of John's creatures are 1 or 2 power, it's actually okay for him to attack with his creatures. He just keeps a card or 2 in hand and then gets to attack with his if Dan Ward's board is not developed for curve reasons you want to unleash that ensnaring bridge. I mean, it's a bit of a weird scenario because you could use Ensnaring Bridge to prowess trigger your Monastery Swift Spear, but that's the world we live in right now. But yeah, this could be a pretty fast one either way if the sideboard plans don't come into play, or it could become a really grind fest. No matter what, I think this is gonna be not maybe the level of Bridge versus Gristle Schulbrand in the last round, but I really like that John innovated his sideboard in this way.
Yeah,
that's a massive edge.
It's hugely new and exciting technology here from John Stern, and it's paid dividends throughout this weekend, slamming him into the top 8 and all the way to the finals. He's got his work cut out for him now as we kick things off for game number 2. Dan Ward opening with a Glade Cover Scout after keeping his 6. But John Stern, he's got the goods, the double bridge here, Eduardo, and it's going to be hugely impactful.
Indeed. I think at this point, John just needs to make sure he has the free lands and that he's offloading his hand. Just so he doesn't... Because Glade Cover Scout could easily be 4 power, and if John is not offloading his hand in the process, then the bridge is not going to start a 4 power creature. And a lifelinking 4 or 5 power creature might be more than enough to mean that John needs 2 or 3 additional cards, and then it gives Dan the time to draw cards and even maybe get a core Spirit Dancer and chain a bunch of auras and get out of control.
And he's looking for answers to those bridges. You mentioned he's got 2 copies of Seal of Primordium as well, and that's a nice little seal to have on the ice here to tussle with what Stern's trying to do. And Stern, for his part, he wants to empty his hand out as quick as possible. Lava Spike to the Domeski here from Stern, because once those bridges are online, again, Ward is kind of on seal or bust here.
Indeed, because John can easily beat a 2/2 or free creature with his own blockers. So Dan's not interested in just having a free. That creature needs to be 5, 6 at least for it to be relevant. And Bridge kind of interacts so well versus Daybreak Coronet because there's not many scenarios where a creature can have Daybreak Coronet and still attack for a bridge. The +3/+3 essentially makes it so large that it's very unlikely that another aura wouldn't pump, and that kind of seals the deal.
Yeah, well, minimum in this deck, I mean, there's no copies of Curiosity or anything. Minimum, it's going to be a 5/5, right?
Except with Spirit Link.
Spirit Link. Well, there you go. I've embarrassed myself once again. Here is a Rancor on the Glade Cover Scout and an Ethereal Armor also turning up the heat here for John Stern. Going to count that up real quick. Looks like 5 or 6 damage might be coming across here.
Yeah, an easy 5.
Easy 5.
So,
well, easy for some. Counting's very hard, Eduardo.
It's quite possible.
Counting's very hard, mate. All these numbers flying around. I don't know what's going on. Arid Mace is getting cracked. John Stern taking another positive whole integer worth of damage in order to get that Stomping Ground out.
Yeah, and here it's critical that John has that third land. I may not have seen one in his hand, and if he doesn't draw that third land for a bridge, he's in real trouble here. There we go. Drawing the Arid Mesa just in time.
Arid Mesa off the top there for John Stern. Exactly just what the doctor ordered, because now, of course, that ensnaring bridge is going to hold off the Glade Cover Scout very tidily. Ward will have to head up to the Frozen Wasteland and start hunting for seals here. More specifically, Seal of Primordium. Again, one of the only ways for him to really interact with what the plan that Stern is on here.
Yeah. I just need to double check what the card count from Stern is. Let's see. He was on the play, and has a Lava Spike, so I believe that he should be down to 4 cards, which is just perfect.
Yeah. Just perfect to hold off that 5 power Glade Cover Scout here. And of course, Stern's going to be able to empty his hand out further in turns. I thought when you said the card count, you're already thinking about how many cards in library, because as you mentioned, Eduardo, this game could come down to milling. If Dan Ward can find a ley line of sanctity here, that could change things. Here's a Core Spirit Dancer, going to pick up a Griff's Boon now, draw a card.
Core Spirit Dancer, probably the biggest argument for John to bring in Path to Exile. The power and toughness, not so important against the Ensnaring Bridge plan. The drawing cards, though, massively so. Even though Dan Ward only has 2 copies of Seal of Primordium, being able to turbocharge through the deck to get to them is a really powerful plan. So here, and also the 4 toughness, the fact that it's a free 4 already is a problem, because John doesn't have any burn spell that can deal with it. Only Path to Exile really deals with it cleanly. Destructive Revelry, another option, but not at its best destroying a Griffspoon here.
No, and he's going to have to find a way to deal with this value machine. I mean, Dan Ward's deck, Bogles, doesn't traditionally, try to play a long, drawn-out value game, but if it has to do that, Core Spirit Dancer is the way for it to do exactly that and play that longer game, drawing cards and what have you. Stern continuing to go after Ward's life total here with a Skullcrack now, back to Ward. And fired off that Skullcrack pretty happily there.
Well, John needed to play a card, any card. If he did not play a card, he would have had 5 cards in hand. That would have been a lot of damage, then would have just swung in for the fences. John really needs to start emptying his hand, just because that Core Spirit Dancer is enough damage on its own already. It does present a clock. It is a 4-turn one, so John probably has time. But he doesn't want to take too much incidental damage because, yeah, as we mentioned earlier, these 2/2s and free power creatures can be a problem because, unlike the Lantern deck, Burn doesn't actually empty its hand that fast. So you're looking with Bridge to stop very large creatures. Small-sized ones are actually kind of rough.
So we see Ward do what we said he's going to try to do and keep those creatures small, with the second Glade Cover Scout picking up a Spider Umbra there and the Ethereal Armor going on that already invalidated Glade Cover Scout. Odd that you often see it put on a creature that you're not planning to attack with.
Yeah. But here, Dan's at 6, and that Bridge gave John enough time to not take all this damage, and with 2 burn spells, this would be all. However, it seems like John only has access to Skullcrack, a second Bridge, and a Destructive Revelry. Destructive Revelry plus Skullcrack would put Dan to exactly 1.
Okay, which would turn off that Horizon Canopy critically.
Well, that's the thing, is do you want to turn it off really, or do you want to surprise Dan?
Oh, hello. Oh, yeah, actually. Yeah, get him down to 5. He's like, okay, well, yeah, I can get through this, and then just get him out of nowhere.
Exactly.
All right, well, Stern chooses to deploy the second Bridge here. Horizon Canopy hits the bin in any case, so this point isn't going to be particularly relevant. Stern takes a hit from the Glade Cover Scout. And it is a slippery bogle. John Stern has to find, one of the several cards in his deck that does 3 damage. It's a Scalding Tarn instead. How close this match is becoming.
It's actually not as close as it seems because John's finally caught up with being able to cast all his spells.
Because he's emptied out his hand. Right,
exactly.
Right.
So Destructive Revelry and Skullcrack putting Dan to 1. No cards. Let's just see what I get off the top.
Yeah, and he's probably odds-on favourite to draw a burn spell here because, there are, plenty of them in the deck, of course. He's going to be drawing very, very live indeed. Here is a Skullcrack. Ward down to 3. Stern hiding behind those bridges.
Yeah.
What can Dan Ward find here? 2 mana. He's making us wait for it. It's a Daybreak Coronet. Draw a card with this Core Spirit Dancer. It's not going to be enough, though.
Yeah, those bridges have been incredible. And here, John shouldn't fire off the Revelry. 1 damage isn't a problem. You just want to make sure you don't lose to something like a Ley Line of Sanctity in a game that you're pretty ahead in and have almost assuredly locked.
Stern off the top. It looked like an Inspiring Vantage was the draw, so the top of his library not treating him kindly. He's got so many Lightning Bolt type effects, but he cannot find it. He's wanting to close things out nice and quickly. And as you say, sandbagging that Destructive Revelry in case Ward finds the 4-drop Ley Line here. 3 cards in hand for Ward. And it's going to be a Rancor. Draws a card, cycling away nicely here. Ward burning through his deck. He's got to find something, but I don't think there's much that gets him out of this pickle here. Stern can just keep plucking those cards off the top of his library till he finds a bolt.
Yeah, and John is perfectly happy taking 2 damage. He will take it next turn, and then after that, he'll be forced to fire the Revelry, assuming he hasn't succeeded in drawing the card he needs off the top.
Now, Ward put that Spider Umbra at the top of the screen on that second Glade Cover Scout. Had he not done that, he could also be attacking with that creature as well in the face of one. Now, he wasn't to know that Stern would end up, not hellbent for the rest of the game. But all the same, he actually would have Stern at a lower life total had he not cast it on that creature.
It's kind of close because I believe that, if I recall correctly, that Spider Umbra got to go in for a point of damage, so it's kind of close.
But now the Glade Cover Scout would have been able to attack twice.
Yeah. So it would have been 1 damage. But
here's a Seal of Primordium.
Right. And that's the key card. So now John needs a burn spell. Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness me. He just cannot find one. Seal of Primordium can take care of one of those ensnaring bridges. And Stern just cannot catch a break. 6 lands off the top. It's been unfortunate for him here, and I think he's just found his 7th.
Yeah, you don't need 7 when you're playing burn.
You usually need 2. Maybe if you're John Stern, you need 3 to cast your ensnaring bridge here.
Yeah, John being really unfortunate with his draws here. I mean, the opening hand and then the third land was great, but then, the flooding here.
More lands in a medieval Baron here. It's not going too well for Stern, who's playing burn, and he needs that 1 key turn to find the final burn spell.
Yep, and here we go.
Arid Mesa.
Play it, pass, just accept that this is your life. And hope that Dan cannot top deck that second Seal of Primordium. That would be really unfortunate.
Dan Ward's going to have a shake of the sauce bottle, see what comes out here.
Yeah,
1 mana.
That Spirit Dancer drawing all these cards is a real problem for John. It's just not something he can deal with without access to Path to Exile. And Path to Exile is an awkward card because when you're on the Ensnaring Bridge plan, if there's no creature to target, it stays in your hand.
It stays in your hand, does nothing. Like, you have to cast your own creature, which you've presumably been sideboarding out. John Stern down to 2. Slippery Bogle beatdown here. And Ward playing another Ethereal Armor, drawing another card. Now, Stern can empty his hand. He's got plenty of targets for that Destructive Revelry, but he's really sandbagging it for any potential ley lines.
Well, at this point, John's done a magnificent job of keeping it as long as possible, but now he's going to have to fire it off. The problem with this Seal of Primordium is it can destroy an enchantment in response, so that Dan doesn't take the 2 damage. But that seal is so critical against the bridge that Dan just has to kind of accept this, go to 1, and hope that John doesn't find the card he needs off the top.
Dan Ward down to 1. Stern off the top. He finds, I think it was a Skullcrack off the top here, and that should do it. It is a Vexing Devil instead. Oh no! Oh no! Dan Ward decides to keep the 4-3 around. He chose wisely here, Eduardo.
Yeah, I think taking 4 damage would have been a very poor choice.
It would have been a very poor choice indeed, B2, as we see another Spider Umbra come down here for Ward, who just continues to stay in this match. This game, somehow.
Yeah, and you can see the ley line in Dan's hand. There aren't that many lands that he can play because of the fetch lands being kind of invalidated.
And a Horizon Canopy as well. What a stinker. What a stinker for
finally.
Ward. Finally. John Stern just kind of wiggling that Boros Charm towards the face of Dan Ward.
Look at the number of permanents.
That is not what you expect. I mean, these are some of the most linear and some of the least interactive decks in Modern, and we are seeing long, drawn-out, grindy games. It is a format full of surprises, ladies and gentlemen. What a wild ride it's been so far, and we have one more game to bring to you live from GP Toronto. My name's Riley Knight. I'm joined by Eduardo Sajgalik. It's great to have your company wherever you are around the world. Thanks for joining us for Sunday Night Magic as the action continues here from GP Toronto. We are only minutes away, Eduardo, maybe quite a few more than we would think, but minutes away in any case from awarding someone with that GP trophy here.
GP trophy, $10,000,
oh, yeah.
8 pro points.
Yeah, not a bad day in the office for whoever's walking away with this one here.
Loser gets 5,000. It's also not quite the best day. But
Not quite the best day that you could possibly have, but I tell you what, it's going to come close. I tell you what, no one's going to have a better day than me right now because I've had an absolute blast this weekend. It's been fantastic. I'm very lucky to have this job, and thank you for all the supportive messages that have been coming our way, Eduardo. We've been on the receiving end of some pretty kind words this weekend, as indeed has the whole coverage team, and I tell you what, certainly is very flattering and humbling to hear the feedback from around the world. We do thank you so very much, those of you who are joining the conversation in a positive manner. It really is our very, very great pleasure to bring you live coverage of events like these. These players now are going to put for the finishing touches on their decks here, and as we say, this is not the most interactive game of Magic you're expecting to see, with something like Bogles full of hexproof creatures, Burn playing a card like Lava Spike, which is perhaps the least interactive card that you can possibly print, really. It's got one mode and one mode only, but all the same, these guys somehow managing to make a real match of it, Eduardo.
Yeah, and speaking of interaction, Ensnaring Bridge interacts with all the cards in Dan's deck, every single one. And, I think it's kind of poetic that Lantern Control would win back-to-back tournaments in a way, right? Getting those Ensnaring Bridges.
Oh yeah. It's going to be the it's going to be the back-to-back land. This is Land Control 2.0, as we all know. There we go. We've already established Goblin Guide to look at the top of the library, Ensnaring Bridge to stop them from attacking, and that's the way she goes here. Looks like Dan Ward has finished his pile shuffle there. John Stern giving a final look over to that those 15 that are sitting on the bench, and we are going to get off to the races here in the final of GP Toronto. If you've been enjoying coverage of Modern over the last couple of weeks, I've got excellent news for you, of course, because it continues next week in France, on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. Of course, the Team EU GP coverage team will be bringing you live and uninterrupted coverage of all the very best in Modern action from GP Lyon. I'm very much hoping you're going to be able to join us for that. Eduardo, I know you'll be glued to Twitch across the weekend, keeping an eye on all the latest developments. You love this format. You've recently finished streaming 30 decks in 30 days. What has changed in your mind about the format this weekend? What lessons have you learned here?
For me, the way Modern has kind of evolved recently, especially with the Pro Tour, is a lot of the lists got what I would call they accelerated the refinement. A lot of the lists changed a couple of cards, 7 to 10, but that massively changes your sideboard plans. And for me, the thing that keeps Modern great so long, and that still is the case, is that sideboard technology, like the Ensnaring Bridges in John's deck, can really propel you to the top stages of a tournament.
Yeah, things can really change, and this this format really does reward innovative and foresighted deck building, tweaking and tuning. Again, we've covered the fact that the Pro Tour didn't see a lot of new archetypes emerge, but all of a sudden we did have new twists and tweaks on decks being made. But here we are with a game in the final match of the tournament here, and Dan Ward is opening on a Dryad Arbor, Eduardo.
And the question on everyone's mind, does John Stern have the 1-mana Stone Rain?
Oh dear. A lightning bolt would really put a huge spanner in the work. Dan Ward knows that this is a calculated risk here from Ward.
Of course. The thing, though, is John doesn't have that many cards that interact with Dryad Arbor on turn 1. You'd think. It's a burn deck, plenty of burn spells.
There'd be heaps, but
it actually boils down to Lightning Bolt. Rift Bolt's a little too slow. Searing Blaze comes out. And Lightning Helix as well, turn 2. So this Dryad Arbor actually has a higher chance of surviving than one might think at first glance.
Yeah, you would think against a burn deck, playing a creature land on turn number 1 is a bad idea. Is John Stern about to show me exactly why? He is not. Goblin Guide rewards Ward with a Temple Garden. And now Stern is looking to get on the front foot here and take Ward to task. What can he find here? Temple Garden off the top, of course. And now a Glade Cover Scout is going to be suited up. The first pair of pants whacked on this little fella is a Hyena Umbra.
I think the most impressive thing that John could do next turn is play Scalding Tarn and attack, no matter whether he has Destructive Revelry or not.
All right, just get in there.
Right, so you have to think, what's the actual value of this Goblin Guide in a long game? Attacking does potentially give Dan a land, which is a very high risk. So John decides not to go for the Insano bluff here. But that was a potential line, is Goblin Guide really worth something? Do I get in there? Because Dan, if this was Dan's only hexproof creature, he would never block or block very low percentage of the time. So there might have been an opportunity to deal 2 damage, which could have been really relevant. That said, John has bridge in hand. His mind is elsewhere.
Yeah, he's wanting to empty out that hand nice and quick, get that bridge online and prevent Ward from getting across. And critically, Ward has missed out on the turn 0 Leyline of Sanctity in each of the games. And the reason I say all 3 of the games, of course, is because he's played in the main deck, Eduardo. This has been the latest piece of innovation from the Boggles lists.
Yeah. Exactly. Instead of some average auras, you run some very high quality enchantment that can win you some matches on the spot.
And if Ward has been playing against black mid-range and burn decks and storm decks all weekend, he will be thanking his lucky stars he chose to include it, because the card is a house against such a broad proportion of the modern format, Eduardo.
Yeah, indeed. Against burn, it's incredible. Just basically blanking most cards in John's deck. Although in game 1, Dan didn't need it because he had Daybreak Coronet. But against the black decks, being able to blank a Liliana of the Veil, blanking Thoughtseize, blanking Inquisitions in game 1s give him a huge edge, because then he can just do his game plan unhindered.
So Ward now, Dryad Arbor and Plains powering out a core Spirit Dancer, which we saw kept Ward's snoot above water a lot longer than it otherwise would have. Ethereal Armor is also added to the board here. So tidy play from Ward, who looks to... Did you draw a card there off the Spirit Dancer?
It doesn't appear so, and it seems whenever you cast the spell.
Doesn't have to enter the battlefield. He does get to draw. Okay, maybe Stern was looking to respond to that trigger here.
Yeah, that's fair. There is no need, because it was targeting the Gladecover Scout and not the Spirit Dancer. I think here John's plan is to turn into burn control. Get rid of that Spirit Dancer. Block that Gladecover Scout before it gets Trample. Trample is the real problem here. So basically, John has to decide, am I going to cash in this Goblin Guide for 4 damage, or am I going to wait and hope that Dan doesn't have that Rancor? Because if Dan has the Rancor, he's going to deal every damage -2. John decides to take it because his feeling is, at worst, I'm losing 2 life by not blocking here. Here, I kind of wonder what John has. Okay, Lightning Helix, end of turn on the core Spirit Dancer. Excellent card. Stops the card draw. You want Dan to not be able to get into that Seal of Primordium. Here, because the Gladecover Scout is 4/4, there is an incentive to play bridge, since it cannot get larger this turn if it wanted to attack. And it also can't get a lifelink hit apart from with a Spirit Link. Even then, actually, only Spirit Link would be able to get that lifelink hit. Remember, with Ethereal Armor, +1/+1 per enchantment, so it'd be a 5/5. And I believe John, by playing bridge, would go to exactly 5 cards. The incentive for John to play bridge here, while it gives Dan that information, at least no horrible aura may come later.
So Stern now looks to be thinking about an attack with the Goblin Guide here.
Yeah, so that was the value of not attacking the Goblin Guide last time in the bluff, is you're going to figure that Dan is going to attack, so you get that attack later anyways.
And so Goblin Guide reveals a Slippery Bogle on the top of Ward's library here.
Yeah, perfect card to reveal. Not a dangerous card.
Yeah, just a little buttery bagel boy there on the top of the library for Ward. And Stern now with 3 mana can deploy the bridge in hand. We'll see if he wants to do that. Doesn't look like he will. Lava Spike goes upstairs. Yeah. Ward down to 13.
And by choosing to Lava Spike here rather than... but actually down to 10. But by choosing to Lava Spike here, he has Skullcrack, so he wants to go Lava Spike, Skullcrack if you have, at the end of turn, whether you have that lifelink enchantment or not, but at least make sure that if you had it, you're not gaining the life. Then bridge once the creature's too large, and take over the game with his last burn spells. It also gives John the chance to win the next turn if he has enough cheap burn spells. And I saw another Lava Spike. There might have been other cheap 1-mana burn spells, and John might be able to just win without needing to play bridge.
Just au natural.
Yes.
Doesn't have to worry about the bridge, any silliness like that. But a Daybreak Coronet, however, is going to mean John Stern has to think about his next steps here very carefully. This is the card that is the most troublesome for Burn to interact with and deal with, because it is a repeated source of life gain, Eduardo.
Exactly. And here, what John needs to do is basically, he's going to have to Skullcrack. 100% that's going to be the line. The only question is, do you get that green source now taking 2 damage, or do you simply get a mountain to prevent yourself from losing too much life? Yeah,
Looks like Mountain is the line here for Stern, who is going to at least ameliorate some of the damage that that Daybreak Coronet is going to do. He's going to take a pasting, but it does mean that Ward's life total will remain unaffected by the Coronet here.
Yeah, so here both players getting to a much lower life total, which suits John fine when there's no Leyline of Sanctity.
So Stern now looked like another Skullcrack off the top here.
It seemed like it was a destructive revelry, so not getting that green source.
Every card in the deck looks like Skullcrack. Vexing Devil, Destructive Revelry, they all look exactly the same as Skullcrack.
Yeah, and here John cannot kill Dan this turn. He's 1 damage off, which could have come from that bluff earlier. It could have not, of course, if Dan had blocked. But I think John's play is kind of forced into bridge here. There's really nothing else he can do. The Goblin Guide can easily block the Bogle or the Dried Arbor if things get a little out of hand. Basically, Dan, if he has Seal, wins. If he doesn't, is in trouble.
Let's find out here. Seal of Primordium off the top here for Dan Ward. May have already had it in hand. Ensnaring Bridge hits the bin, and now Ward is in a position to launch into a huge attack now. And this means, even if he doesn't win on this exact turn here, Eduardo, it means that Stern is in a world of hurt. And unlike Dan Ward, who's going to gain a fair chunk of life here, he is sitting pretty. And let's see if Stern can do anything special here off the top. That wasn't a Skullcrack. That was an inspiring vantage.
He needed Ensnaring Bridge, and even then it wouldn't have been enough because he's at 2 life.
2 life for John Stern, meaning that those other tiny little 1/1s are going to be able to get the job done here. He's weighing up his options, but I don't see a way out. Dan Ward is about to be crowned the champion here of GP Toronto. Congratulations to him. And Bogles is back on top. What a story we've seen evolve this weekend. Eduardo Sajgalik, an incredible performance from Dan Ward, putting Bogles back on the map.
Yeah, to the delight of many hexproof enthusiasts.
Absolutely. I mean, my goodness, this is not a result we expected heading into this weekend. With a wide open format like Modern, really anything could have happened. But I tell you what, if you'd told me Bogles was going to win the whole thing, I would have had to ask you some very serious questions. But that is the way that it goes here at GP Toronto. Your champion, Dan Ward, with Bogles. My goodness, golly gosh, my friends, welcome back to the feature match area here with Riley Knight alongside me. It is, of course, Eduardo Sajgalik. On the tournament floor, you can see things settling down behind us as the tournament has indeed concluded. A round of applause there for Dan Ward, our champion, playing Bogles. Green-white hexproof. It's an archetype that has been around in Modern for quite a while, Eduardo, and it's just taken down a GP. We've already talked about the fact that you're an old hand at Modern, but again, I want to discuss the way that your understanding of the format has changed this weekend. What have you learned?
You can play an old favorite and get back on top. We also saw Elves make the top 8. Gristle Showbrand, a deck that kind of got popular when Instinct came back. A lot of these decks, the kind of yesteryear, that can come back. And the thing, though, with a lot of them is you can be on top with the right innovations. We saw John Stern Ensnaring Bridge in the sideboard, taking many of his opponents probably off guard. Dan Ward's list of Bogles, those main deck Leyline of Sanctity, technology has been adopted online by Thomas Ashton, paying off. On top of that Dromoka's command, a lot of solid play. Like, it's a long tournament. You have to understand what you're getting into, and he decides to play Bogles because he feels that he had a grasp on what he could face, and he beat some pretty hard matchups. I know, discussing with him earlier, and but you can really play what you want in Modern. What I would say for kind of anybody listening at home is don't come in with the stock list. Try to find a way where your deck can innovate a little bit. It doesn't need to be many cards. Just 2 cards sometimes is enough in the right deck, but 5 or 6, and transform your deck in post-board games to something your opponent isn't expecting, attacking on another angle, rest in peace. Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna go over the top with something like a Hazaret.
Yeah.
You can attack on a very different angle, and I think that's one of the most important skills in Modern is how to sideboard, how to counter your opponent's sideboard plan, and how to figure out what your opponent's doing in post-board games.
Well, that is a number of very important lessons we can all take away from this weekend. Eduardo, it's been great to hang out with you so far. You're going to step out of the booth for now. I'm sorry, mate. It's been great to spend this weekend with you. Thanks so much for your support. But right now, we are going to be joined by the man of the hour. Here he is, Mr. Dan Ward, the champion of GP Toronto. Whack that headset on there, my man. Congratulations to you. You've taken down the tournament, a 5-figure payday for you. What's it feeling like right now?
All the hours logged with just Magic in general, not just with Boggles. It just I still can't believe I'm in this position. I've this is my 5th Grand Prix top 8, and I've lost in the first round every time.
Every time.
So I'm just kind of it's just. I have to play another round, right?
No, man, it's all yours. This piece of hardware's going home on the mantelpiece. You've got to be feeling happy with yourself. I mean, look, there are going to be people around the world who obviously love Bogles. There are going to be people who can't stand the deck. Was this a deck that you were kind of locked into early, or do you think it was just a good pick for this tournament? What was your approach to picking the deck that you chose?
So I think the deck is just a good deck, not a great deck. I think it's a good deck in general. And I think with the information from the Pro Tour, I think it's actually projected to be better than normal from humans and decks that want to beat humans, because people that have removal spells can't target your creatures, so they don't line up really well, and you have a lot of free game ones. Mm-hmm. And I just feel if you get game one, you just got to win one of the 2 sideboarded games, and I feel this deck is really powerful at doing that, winning game ones.
If you can get game 1 on the free ski, then you can try to steal one of the second games post board, where the odds maybe aren't as favorable, but still you got a good chance.
Yeah, definitely. And with ley lines in the main deck, I spoke with Calcano, Tommy Ashton, and Javier Dominguez this week, other people that have played the deck, and they kind of sold me on it. I've kind of been touch and go with it as a meta call with the ley lines, but they were great. They were just so great this weekend.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't get them against John, but
no, exactly where you'd want them. But I mean, we talked about this a little bit on stream here today, Dan. The fact that they are great against a wide proportion of the modern field. Black mid range, of course, Burn, Storm. They shut down a lot of decks. And especially pre-board where we don't have that, those anti-hate cards, those disenchant effects.
Yeah, usually I don't really like the card, because you don't want a top deck like that. You just want any enchantment usually to finish the game. However, the leverage this deck kind of wins in miles, not by feet.
Yeah, right.
And so in the beginning of the games, the way they matter, round 5 or 6 when I played 8 rack, if I didn't have it game 1 or game 2, which I had, and I was very fortunate to have, I just lose, I think. I just don't think I can beat that deck without having that card.
So it just gives you some percentage points here.
Yeah, and I think it's just the one card that I top deck is just kind of negligible.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, there you go. I mean, this deck, you mentioned it's well positioned. So just to finish things off here, I want to ask you, in a field that's overrun by humans, in a field that's overrun by creature decks, are you considering that Bogles is now... I mean, was this just the deck of the week, or are we going to see it perform strongly next week in Leon as well?
I think it's a deck that if people prepare in their sideboards for, they can beat it. But, this is the second Canadian GP I've played Modern, both with Boggles, both top-aided.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I just think, yes, it can be, better positioned, but it's just always in a good position. And, I played Jeskai 4 times this tournament, and twice was the same person. And 74 to 75 from 2 of the lists. And they had multiple Ruined Halos and Detention Spheres, and, one gentleman had Settle the Wreckage, and that's really hard to beat with Snapcaster. So if decks want to beat Boggles, then they can beat it. Just I think this weekend happened. Lantern did well, so there was a lot of artifact hate, and we didn't really see Lantern at all.
Yeah.
So I think it's just kind of an ever-shifting Modern, and Modern's great right now, and everybody can do whatever they want.
Yeah, and if what you want to do is play Slippery Bogle, then certainly, I mean, if you're Mr. Dan Ward, you're going to be very happy to have made that decision. Dan, congratulations. I'll get you to stick with us while we wrap the show up here, but that is just about that for team coverage this weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, I do want to say once again, what a pleasure it's been to have your company throughout the weekend. From all of us here at Team Coverage, thanks so much for sticking with us. Our thanks also go out to the tournament organisers, the judges and the staff here at the Enercare Centre in Toronto. It's been great to have their support, and of course to all the players who came out to crack some skulls this weekend. It's been great, but the biggest thanks of course goes out to you around the world, wherever you are. You make this possible. You allow me to have the best job in the world, and so from me on a personal note and on behalf of the team, thank you so very, very much for being the most wonderful community in the world. It's so great to be a part of it. My friends, we are going to wrap things up here from Canada. Thanks for sticking with us, and on behalf of everyone here in Toronto, don't forget that we're all winners for having taken part. Some of us just win a little bit more than others. Riley Knight, on behalf of the rest of the coverage team from Toronto, saying good night. Well done, my friend.